Glue Wednesday. You see, it's my belief that we don't have to get over. We need to find ways to keep it together. And my glue is G.L.U.E. God's love undoes everything, because that's what keeps it together. That life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of each puzzle in your family, social, or business relationships. Yet, no matter what size puzzle piece you think you are, without you, the puzzle is labeled as incomplete.
And hey, welcome back to Glue Wednesday. I'm Sporty King, your host. And I thought I was hearing a common theme among the show hosts here at the Wake Up Call Network. Then I noticed how many people in my network actually were responding to messages about grief, suicide, and mental illness. So I chose to just take a sidestep to help the message by making the point that triggers in our lives are not always associated with illness or regret. Thus, my topic for this broadcast will be about messengers and choosing your messengers carefully. And what I'll do is share two of my original poems to make the point. The first one is about one of my biggest triggers in choosing a messenger. My trigger is I don't like someone raising their voice at me. You want to talk about me losing it? Raise your voice at me. So that's one of my biggest triggers. And one of my mantras is always, control your vocabulary. Don't let your vocabulary control you. It's the context of sentences and situations that give individual meaning to the reactions to the words. And you know that when we hear the term shout out, we think of someone acknowledging our presence. Well, I'm going to twist it in here a little and talk about one of my triggers, which about shouting out. And I wrote this poem in 2002. It's called Don't Give Me a Shout Out. First, there were shouts of the raiders, aimed at scaring me stiff to reduce the struggle of the hunt and capture. There were shouts of the captives, echoless, unheard, and even unseen all around me as I grew numb to the understanding of the hatred that had once been hunting. Isn't it natural for prey to resist? Or must the hunter meditate and concoct nightmares that become fantasies of wanting to possess a power he was not gifted with? Focused on holding on to those fantasies, perhaps the hunter defies the reality that the catch has no corresponding urge to be caught. And the darkness of the hunter's nightmare transfers to the hull of a ship as the initial restless place of the live game, and silently begs that his conscience would find peace and justify his lustful addiction for human bondage. And like me, the hunter wanted to be understood. Yet the shouts got louder and became more unbearable as they took on the tones of moaning, pain, suffering, defiance, surrender. And surrender was the most deafening because it mocked the others as wasteful. Surrender shouted at me for believing that I should be free. And then I recalled it as like the first shout. There were shouts that could have been welcomes. Shouts that should have been thanks. Shouts that should have shown understanding. Shouts that could have guided. Shouts that might have instructed. Shouts that may have educated. Yet all the shouts ever seemed to want was surrender. And I remembered the first one. It shouted at me for believing that I should be free. So I don't hear shouts anymore. Instead, I feel them. I feel them as my back stiffens and braces, as my teeth clench and my eyes refuse to close, as my knuckles turn an unseen white with anger that guarantee to one day send a hole through the necessary flesh, threatening to inhibit my peaceful walk with God in my custom-made heaven, where my every freedom is not challenged. No, I don't hear shouts anymore. I see them. I see them with every door that's slammed and echo this denial of my right to light, housing, or employment. I see them as assassins' bullets, bamboozled, hoodwinked, bamboozled, and aimed at erasing my newfound wisdom. And no, that's not sweat you see on my brow, but the reminder of how the quest to hose down my existence turned more than a cheek. It turned this mother out, and I don't hear you when you shout. because I smell oceans, crosses burning, tear gas and traitors of all colors. And I taste defeat. I taste blood, bile, and mucus, the dirt kicked up from the person 3 bodies ahead of me, salt water, scraps, rations, even the freedom that raindrops brought, and that choice to enjoy the sun's kiss. I feel, I see, I smell, I taste. I even understand why they want to keep me out. But I can't hear you when you shout. When I was in high school, you see, that shouting really does bother me. I remember when I was in high school, I was a basketball star. And what we had was called Alumni Weekend. And what would happen on Alumni Weekend is the alumni would play the varsity in a basketball game. And because I was one of the stars, I was the star on the junior varsity basketball team, I got to sit on the bench of the varsity team. Well, during the alumni game, and the alumni were really good, and they were, doing a good job beating our varsity. Well, my coach put me in. I think it was probably in the third quarter, close to the end of the game. And I was nervous. Even though I was the star of the junior varsity, I was nervous. And I got in there and I fouled somebody. So one of my boys screamed from the stand and said, "Way to get in the books." And so I smiled. And the next thing you know, I fouled somebody else. I got 2 fouls in a matter of seconds, and I still smile. Well, my coach yanked me out of the game, and he screamed at me. For the next 2 games, I played terrible. I had no passion and no interest in anything that the coach or the team was doing. And the coach finally pulled me aside and asked me what was the matter. And I told him, I said, you shouted at me. And he looked at me, he said, "What?" I said, "You screamed at me." And I told him, see, he thought that the fact that I was smiling while I was on the court was inappropriate. He thought that I wasn't taking the game serious. He never looked at the fact that it was a nervous smile, and that I was getting over my nervousness and I was reacting to the comment that my friend had made from the stands. And therefore, I ended up reacting to his comment of raising his voice at me. So, again, that's one of my triggers. When someone raises their voice at me, I turn off. I turn off and I tune out. You have to think about what your triggers are, and you have to look at them. And remember what we talked about at the beginning. A trigger is not something that we want to automatically associate with a mental illness, because that's usually when we hear it. When we say somebody, well, this triggered this, and they got PTSD, and this triggered a bad reaction. It's not always that, but we do have triggers. I use the title DAY, Don't Always Yell, as a speech to a church during Youth Day, where I was talking to the parents about disciplining their children. You see, God does not speak to us in one tone. His strongest messages come when we are at peace, meditation, sleep, daydreaming. Yet we have to be in tune to get his direction. So I apply this scripture to my trigger of not wanting to be shouted at. And it's from 1 Kings 19:11 through 12. And I have it chopped up, but the main message is, but the Lord was not in the wind. He was not in the earthquake. He was not in the fire. And after the fire, there was the sound of a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he went out and stood at the entrance of the cave. The Lord's voice talks to you in a gentle whisper. That's my communication of choice. So even though the poem is called Don't Give Me a Shout Out, and we know that, again, this is why you have to really understand vocabulary and use it to your advantage. Watch the context. The English language is so hard to learn, they say. They say the English language is one of the hardest to learn, if not the hardest, because we have the same words that look alike, but they sound totally different. We have live, and then if you don't know how to read the sentence, you don't know whether it's live or live, but it's the same spelling. So you have to really get your education together. I know one of the shows that we have on Wake Up Call Networks is Encouraging Words by Jamila Freeland, and it talks about getting scholarship money to go to college. It's not going to do you much good to go to college if you can't read. And a lot of times I'll laugh because, you know, in my business as a motivational speaker, I'll hear people say, well, you know what? I want to learn how to be a good speaker. I said, well, then learn how to be a good reader. Because if you can't read, you can't speak. You know, you have to understand it in the speaking business, not just in the speaking business, but we can look at extensions of it. If you can't read, you can't deliver. Look at your politicians, look at your newscasters, look at the people on TV. They're reading cue cards. Well, these days they're not cue cards, they're monitors. But they're reading the monitors. So I always say you have to also be a good writer. It's just like when someone said, well, you know, I'm just going to speak from the heart. No, don't speak from the heart, write from the heart. And then speak from your profession and your education. You've got to be a good reader, young ladies and gentlemen, and old ladies and gentlemen. If you want to be a speaker, because you are going to be someone's messenger, you will be speaking, and sometimes what speaks volumes are your actions rather than your words. And they all are associated, and they're all the same thing. So again, remember to get it together and go into that prayerful mood. Listen for the whispers. Listen for the guidance that you need. Because the only time you will truly be successful is when you decide to follow your lead. The only time you will fail is when you try to be someone else. And that's one thing that Sporty does not do well. I'm not good at being someone else. And I've tried it. Come on, you know, everybody, you know, I didn't grow up with this squeaky clean life. I tried to be someone else as I grew up. I dealt with peer pressure. I dealt with low self-esteem. You know, I did all of that stuff, but that's not the stuff that I like to talk about. Because I like to talk about the deliverance. The journey is mine. And the truth is that you can't really appreciate the journey. One thing I always laugh about, I say, you know, you don't know how really good I am as a speaker because you only see my positive tweets and messages instead of seeing my life. So recognize that that's the same gift that you have, where people are using you as their messenger because they don't see the background of what's going on in your life. And isn't that okay? Shouldn't we help people by encouraging them to show them that not that, oh, you can do it because I did it. No, just you can do it because you are who you are. That's, to me, a much more important message. So this final poem is about my triggers of lying and consistency. Those are two triggers for me. When someone lies to me, I can't take lying. I pretty much lose it when someone lies to me. Again, I shut down and shut out. And if someone's inconsistent, that's another trigger for me. Because I need consistency. I have a friendship that I have to offer. Now, I'm not positive 365 days a year, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. But I'm positive more than I'm negative. I'm up more than I'm down. I'm going forward more than I'm going backwards. And there's nothing wrong with reframing going backwards to recognize that every now and then you just have to step back and take a look at your work. That's consistency. And so if you are not willing to be consistently who you are, and let's take it right back to that comment, if you're trying to be somebody else, you'll fail. Why? Because you can't consistently be that other person. You can only be them in spurts. But you can be you, and you must be you the entire time. And that consistency that you have of being you, you also can't be concerned with whether or not you are liked or disliked. There's no such thing as a person that everyone likes. There's no such thing as a person that everyone dislikes. Now, I know I get a lot of people, oh, Sporty, everybody likes you. Bulletin, don't think I believe that hype. There's no such thing as everybody that likes Sporty. Because there's somebody that doesn't like the fact that you like me. So, you know, you have to really, again, listen to the words that you use. Words are powerful. And they are not to be played with. Choose yours carefully as we go on into choosing our messengers carefully. So my triggers are lying and consistency. And though I will not name them, the main two characters who inspired this poem are politicians. And one is what we have allowed the media to name for and give us. The media has named and given us a person called a black leader. You don't give me my leader. You have to understand that. I know this is Black History Month, so we're going to hear a lot of different types of messages about who we should follow. I don't follow anybody that can't lead me. And I don't lead anybody that isn't willing to follow. I'm not the type of person that said, in fact, think about this. When the pastor says the doors of the church are open, they don't say the doors of the church are open, get up here. They say, is there one? You see, sometimes you have to recognize that when you're a leader, you may have one follower. And does that take away the energy and the power that you have to lead? Absolutely not. Because if God has invested that power in you, he says, is there one? And they'll stand there, they'll ask, is there one? Is there one? Because they want to give you time. Because remember what we're talking about? It's coming to you in a whisper, not a shout. It's coming to you in a whisper. And if this is your day, then that's what they do. They offer you the hand of Christ, the right hand of fellowship. So there's a lot of different instances that we have in our lives where we find that we are being asked, are you the one? We are never being asked, are you someone else? We'd like you on our team. We are being asked, are you who you are? Do you have the truth in you, and are you consistent about being who you are? Because that's what's going to help us make the difference. You know, we talk about having puzzles, and I'm going to always use that line on you, that life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of the puzzle. Yet no matter what size puzzle piece you see yourself as, without you, the puzzle is called incomplete. Are you incomplete, or are you an important piece of the puzzle? As you choose your messengers, the puzzle comes together. And recognize that sometimes you may be the middle part of the puzzle. When we start doing the puzzle, what do we do first? We get the corners taken care of. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the middle part of that puzzle, then you've got to do what? You've got to be the most patient piece in the puzzle. Because you've got to wait for all of your surroundings to start filling themselves in. And what can you do while they're filling them in? Nothing. Sometimes that's the source of our stress, is that we decide that we can do more than we can. Sometimes all we can do is wait. Just like Donnie McClurkin said, oh, sometimes you just stand. Now, it might not be Donnie McClurkin's record, but that's who I like. So when I quote a gospel singer, he's one of the names that comes up. But I'm pretty sure actually that he is the one that sings Stand. So that's sometimes that's really all you can do. Again, keep finding out who you are so that you can have this happen for you. So let me move back onto this poem. Okay, so again, the media names and gives us someone called the black leader. So the trigger behind these two people, these politicians, is the fact that I hold them to a higher standard. If you're going to tell me who I have to follow as a leader, if you're going to tell me that you're the leader, I hold you to a higher standard. When you deliver a message, you have to trust and believe that people's lives will be impacted by your deeds far beyond your words, especially when you're delivering from a place of power and influence. And the trigger is related to time spent complaining about politicians, problems, and people, instead of remembering, which a trigger is a memory, that what they said and what they did. Thus, my wish is that we could all share this gift, and this gift of a trigger, when it comes time to vote or to follow a vote. Because see, many times we're voting based on association. And we choose who to follow. Sometimes based on their celebrity status rather than their past actions. This poem I wrote in 2001. That first one I wrote in 2002. So this one was in 2001. So you can see I was in a pretty revolutionary state of mind at that time. This one is called My Voice, My Message. I suppose my voice would be more appealing if I sounded like Paul Robeson, James Earl Jones, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., or Jeffrey Holder. But I need you to accept it as it is, because my voice is what counts, as was theirs. And my message reminds you, Y-O-U. Young, old, unique. You. There's no one who's even like you. You're it, the end, final, finished, finito, complete. Yet your quest must continue to be so. So have the patience to let yourself evolve. Expect the ups. Understand the downs. Take advantage of your ability to turn every negative situation around. Be living proof that you're alive. Recount and relish all you've done to survive. Think about the good new days, having let the old get better. And take the time to encourage a child. Don't worry about looking around for a little kid. find a senior citizen and help make them smile. You see, we are all somebody's child, yet each pound was once an ounce. Our first words didn't solve the problems of the world, and it's what we'll do today that may linger into tomorrow. Will that what be beneficial to boys and girls? Will that what uplift each spirit, touch hearts as well as it flows through lips, and remind each ear to share its belief system with either eye until a chill arrests your fingertips and begs your brain to relive that what that brings victory into these spoiled surroundings of greed, lust, and lackluster promises? My message says that if an apology can save lives, that possibly mean I can promote world peace, knowing that few soldiers are in position to get hit by something called a bullet. In fact, they have a better chance of getting hit by an arrow. And suddenly that army of one isn't a win after all. Instead, it's a loss of another student looking for a loan, whose mother must now be alone in that 9-month vacuum used to add to mankind's process of elimination. Well, then maybe what I'll do is find a way to apologize. You see, my message has to be about more than me, yet sometimes less about you, but always about him. My message must somehow be devoid of a double standard, not allowing me to preach about morality on Sunday, using the same sermon Saturday to get a little more on Monday, popping it as game on Wednesday in Washington and turn it into sweet talk on Tuesday and Thursday, and then on the 5th day he would rest. And my message must find ways to save my casting stones so that I might cast players versus being cast as a player without asking you to have a flashback to justify your belief in me, in case you don't want to apologize. Yes, my message has to be about more than me, yet sometimes less about you, while always about him. When my message talks about equality, it can't be about how important the internet is. I'll repeat that. When my message talks about equality, it can't be about how important the internet is. And the quality of our friendship should not be measured by the quantity of our contact. So whether we connect by ear, hand, or air, there should be a balance and a touch that delights the gods and makes an angel feel like he's doing his job. Life, L-I-F-E, lessons intended for everyone. Love, L-O-V-E, learning our value is essential. And laughter provide a trilogy and high, uninterested in a low comparison to justify J-O-Y, just one you, because J-O-Y, Jesus owns you. Yet my message has to be about more than me. Yet sometimes less about you, but all about him. And I'm sure my voice would be more appealing if I sounded like Paul Robeson, James Earl Jones, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., or Jeffrey Holder. But I'm even more sure that no matter how my voice sounds, I have something to say, because my message is what counts. And so that's the thing. We've got to recognize that sometimes people will follow you and have friendships by association. Make sure that as you choose your messengers, you're choosing quality people in your life, because it's the quality that makes a difference, not the quantity. It doesn't matter how many friends you have on Facebook. How many of them do you actually know? How many of them are on your page to check what you're doing? And not that I'm going to set it up to give you a negative way to look at things, because sometimes that's what we do, is we get pounded by negativity, and it becomes the order of the day where everything we do is based on how negative we feel. On my way here to tape this show, I was talking to an old neighbor of mine who started talking about how in Chicago, how bad it is, and you just don't want to go out. And I said, wait a minute, if you don't go out, then the knuckleheads win. You have to recognize this is our world. It's not the knuckleheads' world. The knuckleheads are required. And if you don't have enough knuckleheads in your life, well, then you need to get some of them too. Because the truth is, they help us keep the balance, because they sometimes become the better role models. We're much better at deciding what we don't want to be like, because we feel that we don't want to make ourselves go down that cesspool, whereas sometimes we feel that we can't live up to a good role model because we think, I don't think I got it like they got it. So we play a lot off of the negative role models. I'm not saying now go around and try to get you a whole bunch of negative ones, but just don't ignore them. Recognize that you are part of why we came up with the cliches like the diamond in the rough, needle in the haystack. Don't be the person that's looking for the quantity of friends. Look for the quality. And understanding what your triggers are going to help you do that. The scripture that I attached to that last poem of my voice, my message, is Luke 16:31. But Abraham said, if they won't listen to Moses and the prophets, they won't listen even if someone rises from the dead. Mm-hmm. And I actually also call that my scripture, I call that Jesus in jest, because that's got to be the joke. When Abraham is saying this so long ago, they won't even listen to someone who rises from the dead. And guess who ends up rising from the dead? And guess who ends up not listening to him? So you have to, again, see how all these things come into play. So both of these poems come from my book, A Poet and Every Prophet. And I've had people blink at the boldness of my title. Yet what I embrace is my spirit and my definition of the book that I dedicated to a group of students at Purdue University, class of 1999 to 2001. They were members of the Haraka Writers Writing Ensemble through the Black Cultural Center, and I was the artist in residence. And so what would happen is sometimes they'd ask me if I thought a certain poem was good. Well, one of my beliefs is in encouraging poets to understand that all of their poetry is good, and that they don't need anyone else's approval. And so I close this broadcast with 2 Timothy 3:16. It says, all scripture is inspired by God and is useful to teach us what is true and to make us realize what is wrong in our lives. In other words, that scripture is a reminder that God did not write the Bible, people wrote the Bible. And so they were inspired. It's a gift to have your heart and your hand inspired to transmit a thought, which is what poets do. This is one of the reasons I entitled the book A Poet and Every Prophet. If you can see, poet is small, but in the word prophet it's a capital P-O-E-T. So there is a poet in every prophet. And we have to recognize that every single poet that you know is a prophet. Poets, don't ask people, is that poem good? Did you like it? It's not important. That poem was something that God has written through you so that your message can get out there. Your message is not for everybody. Make sure that your message is in good shape so that it can be delivered to the person who you were sent to get. We're not here to get everybody. You'll even hear pastors say, oh, I know I'm not speaking to everybody. Because you're not. You're speaking to that one person. So know and watch your triggers. Choose your messengers carefully, knowing that you are being chosen by someone. So I need you to stay strong, because life is about going from one puzzle to the next. You're either a small, medium, or large piece of the puzzle in all of your family, social, and business relationships. Yet again, no matter what size puzzle piece you see yourself as, without you, the puzzle is called incomplete. Thanks and blessings. I'm Sporty King, and I'll see you next week on G.L.U.E Wednesday.